Hello, welcome to Connecting with the Stars. I'm Mary Edwards and here with the wonderful, brilliant, one smart guy, Ray Hernandez, who has lots of information to share with us tonight. And he's going to start talking about all his research that he's been working on and several of his books he's got in hand, and about all the medical miracles that he's been researching with an incredible group of people over the many, many years. So I'll just let you take it away and share your information, Ray, and share with us what you've been doing with Edgar Mitchell Foundation and everything else, and what your passion is here.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, Mary. I applaud your work, bringing all these things to light. It's extremely important. Just for the individuals that know nothing about me, before March 4th, 2012, I was an atheist. I was a rationalist, materialist. I had zero understanding of these concepts relating to consciousness, the paranormal, and I thought everyone that was interested in these topics were all kooks. So on that day, my wife and I had a joint experience in our living room where an energy being appeared. My wife disappeared in front of me. The dog disappeared. This being put me to sleep. And our dog was totally paralyzed. We were going to be euthanizing the dog the next day. And so my wife, the night before, was praying all night to the Virgin Mary of Mexico, La Virgen de Guadalupe. And so to me, it was like, pray all night that all you want, nothing's going to happen, you know. And but in the morning, my goodness, it's this being appeared. It was rectangular in shape, like 4 feet wide, 2.5 feet wide, floating 4 feet off the ground, multiple colors inside, swirling like a desert mirage, and it was semi-transparent. And after I woke up an hour later, then I had my consciousness back, and I ran down the stairs, and my wife, poof, reappeared, like the Star Trek, beat me up, Scotty, and beat me down, like boom. She appears again. The dog now appears, but the dog is now running around the entire living room. And to me, I felt like an atom bomb exploded in my head because I was like dumbstruck. I couldn't speak for like more than a minute. And then finally I go to my wife. I said, where were you? I said, what do you mean, where was I? I said, look at the time. It's 7 o'clock. You know, we woke up with the dog at 6 o'clock. So it's an hour later. Where'd you go? So it was actually an individual, a retired school teacher that had worked with UFO contact experiencers that told me that what your wife had was missing time. I never heard of that term before. I had zero interest in it, and we did that because we had our second major UFO experience, my wife and I. And so I found out this organization called MUFON, and they sent this elderly lady. Her husband is a scientist. He had just retired from the National Hurricane Center in Miami. So they came by and they investigated our case. And so my wife has called down tons of UFOs. The way she would do it is she'd be outside praying, you know, because she still thinks to this day that these are all angelic apparitions, because she was praying all night to the Virgin Mary, and boom, you know, this energy being appears. So no one's going to take that from her mind. Even the first UFO that she ever saw, she took our dog out at 3:30 in the morning because the dog woke her up, thinking that she wanted to go to the bathroom. This is about 3 months after that initial experience. So she heard this deafening noise, very, very loud noise, which then stopped. Then she looked up, and it was the Goodyear blimp right in front of her. You know, he goes, "Oh, my angels came." You know, they came in a beautiful angelic craft, and it had stained glass windows, just like our church. Oh, my lovely angels. You know, so I asked her to draw it for me because I was confused. I thought she was talking about an angel with wings. You know, so she drew it for me. I said, "You saw a UFO?" I said, "It wasn't a UFO. It was my angels." And you're acting like that because you're an atheist. You know. And so that was when I first realized that this was UFO related. And then several months later, my wife had returned from Mexico. She was there an entire month, and she was just doing the same thing. She was praying at night, and these huge UFOs would appear, and they were witnessed by her family members, in different places that she would visit with her family members. And so she finally told me that story. My daughter told me the story. Her sister told me the story. Her nieces told me the story. And so, I was like, now I know this is UFO related. And so then I said, okay, let me give it a try. Right. And I started, calling down, in a similar way, the UFO that had healed our dog, because our dog was like our first child. So in the beginning, I wasn't, I was just killing time because I was waiting for a friend to give me some papers. I was waiting outside. But as time went by, I became much more sincere, much more loving, much more caring. And then I was almost like, like having a love fest, wanting to see this intelligence to thank it, because it healed our dog. Our dog was like our child, And so within 15 minutes, I said to myself, I'm going crazy here, calling down a UFO. I need to stop. I'm going down the rabbit hole, and this is not healthy, And so then immediately after I had that thought, I looked up right on top of my next door neighbor's house. He has a ranch style house, was this huge object. Okay. It was like 100 meters tall, 600 meters it went back, but it wasn't material. It was made up of oblong streaks of light with all this white energy in the middle of it. And so then I heard a voice, my daughter's voice. She wants to see a UFO. Okay. My daughter never told me that. But in my mind, it was a telepathic communication. But in my mind, I said, my daughter wants to see it. So I went to grab her. So now she's watching this with me. And then my friend comes with his wife and their 17-year-old daughter. They began to try to explain it away. After a minute of trying to explain it away, their reasons were just so absurd, so silly, that I busted out laughing. And then in my head, I communicated with this intelligence. I don't know why I did it. To this day, I still don't know why, but it's like I had this relationship with them all my life, And I basically told them, I said, look, you better come up with something better than this, because my friends don't believe you. Okay. Immediately, what I was watching was disappeared and totally replaced now by about 100 large orbs, like the size of Volkswagens. And they were going like this, on and off, these large orbs. And then they were taking turns, like powering up and powering down. So then my friends stopped, trying to explain it. Now, later on, when you go back and you revisit these experiences, I realized that what I was watching was actually a holographic projection. Because here I was, hey, you better come up with something better than this, man. My friends don't believe you. Boom. Deleted, replaced by something totally different. Okay. So it wasn't like that was real, like that was physical, that we were watching. Yes, we were watching it with our eyes, but it was a projection into our consciousness to make us think that that's what we're watching. Just like when UFOs appear, some people see it, some people don't. Okay. With certain beings, some people see them, other people don't. Okay. And then with the voice of my daughter, what I figured out was that whatever this intelligence is that we're dealing with, and to me, it's the mind of God. It's the universal mind. Okay. It extracted all the historical discussions of my daughter and I, and my daughter's voice. It then re-scrambled it, like in the Akashic records, reprogrammed it, and then telepathically downloaded it to me. So I'm hearing my daughter's voice. Daddy, you and mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you guys see a UFO, you call me, Daddy, all right? Don't forget. My daughter never said that, okay? So then I began to realize, oh my God, what I'm interacting with was nothing what you're reading in these UFO books and in these abduction books. This is way, way more complicated. And then most of my major experiences have been orchestrated events. And one was how they gave me spirituality. They gave me spirituality via a series of near-death experiences. I won't go into the detail because it's just takes too long. But basically, the day after I saw that huge UFO, I saw a video on near-death experiences. I then ordered 20 books on NDEs. And once there were 5 books left, or 20 more. 5 books left, 20 more. It started 4 hours a day. At the end of 4 months, it was 16 hours a day. Okay. I didn't do any of I'm a tax attorney for the folks that don't know me. I didn't do any of my cases. Okay, for like the last month. I didn't watch TV. I didn't want to go to the internet. I didn't deal with my wife. I wasn't shaving. I wasn't showering. I wasn't grooming myself. I was a crazy madman, just focusing on this thing. Okay, and then 3 days in a row: Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday, December 21st. Saturday, December 22nd. Sunday, December 23rd. The year was 2012. Okay, someone told me, Ray, do you know what Friday, December 21st, 2012 was? I have no idea. Well, that's the Mayan calendar. Well, I've been to Mexico. I saw these calendars there. Man, is that what you're talking about? No, no, it's something totally different. They explained it to me. Okay. I still don't understand it. But that was the first day, Friday, December 21st, 2012. The very first person I ever mentioned NDEs to, which is my daughter's pediatrician. And I mentioned it in a robotic voice that came out of my body. Okay. Well, good news. Your daughter doesn't have a fever. I checked her ear, nose, and throat. We checked her temperature. I didn't see any redness or anything. Maybe it was just a virus. So your daughter's fine. Okay. Excuse me, doctor. Have you ever heard the term near-death experiences? I've just finished reading approximately 300 books on this topic. Many of them were written by medical doctors such as yourself, and it's a phenomenon that you need to know about. So as I was saying this, I was like, oh my God, my wife is right. I am going crazy. I need to go to a psychiatrist. I'm not well, because I got another voice inside of me. All right. So the doctor's eyeballs are like this. And I said, oh my God, now this woman thinks I'm crazy. Excuse me, doctor, I apologize. I don't know why I said that. There's no need to apologize. How did you know I had one? So in front of my daughter, she goes on and tells me about her NDE. Okay. And it's too lengthy for me to tell you the details. But it was in her office that she's telling my daughter and I about her NDE. Okay.
And you never heard this before? Of
course not. No. I've just been reading you NDE books, and watching NDE videos on YouTube, for the longest time. I became like an NDE expert. Okay. And so the next day, it was a church social function. My wife, as I said before, is a big time Catholic. We had to go every Sunday to mass, every Thursday to group prayer meetings. Whenever there were events at the church, I had to go. If not, I'd be ostracized from the family. And so this was a Saturday dinner for the members of the Spanish ministry. Okay. And so the priest came, he blessed the food, the deacon was there, he accompanied us, whatever. And so then it was dinner for like 50 couples. And so my wife sat next to this lady who's also from Mexico, and I never met her husband. So I met her husband, and her husband is Cuban American like I am. We were both born in Cuba. We both came as young boys. And so we, for like the first 2 minutes, we started talking about that commonality. And then all of a sudden, excuse me, Max, have you ever heard the term near-death experiences? I've just finished reading approximately the same thing verbatim. And in my head was like, I am crazy. I am not well. I need to go see a psychiatrist, And then all of a sudden, Max's eyeballs pop out. He's all stunned. And I said, oh my God, Max, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. And so he says, Ray, I've never told this to anybody. Okay. And then he starts telling me about his mother's near-death experience, that his mother died a year ago in his home. And no one was there. So he was giving her mouth to mouth. He was resuscitating her, pounding on his chest. And he knows how to do that because he works in a hospital. He's a MRI technician. He's been doing it for 25 years. And so he starts telling me that once he arrived at the hospital, because he was right behind the ambulance, and they finished reviving his mother told him, I was floating above you. You were crying on top of me. You told me this, you told me that, you told me that, everything that he was saying. Okay. And then all of a sudden there was this big, fat, heavy black man, 300 pounds, comes crashing through the door, very tall, followed by a short woman with blonde hair, a blonde ponytail. But Mom, how did you know that? Those are the paramedics. Well, I know it because I was floating above you. I was seeing everything. And she went through the tunnel, went through the light. She met her deceased husband, the full works. Okay. So that was the second person, right? So then I said, I got to tell this to my father, because my father was the Cuban Archie Bunker. Okay. He's always goddamn this, goddamn that, only been to church twice. One was when my two kids were baptized. And then the other time was when my sister got married at the church. Okay. The only times. And so he was very, very ill. He was bedridden, very, very sick. We knew he didn't have a long time to live. He was 84 years old and he died a year later. So I said, I need to tell this to my father, okay, about what happened on Friday, what happened on Saturday, and this was on a Sunday, the very next day, and not that I was spiritually converted. No, I had never made that association between those 4 months and what had happened these next 2 days, because I was so far gone. I was so much of a materialist, okay, that I hadn't made that connection at all, okay. And so what I now realize is that the work that I'm doing now, okay, if you're not a spiritual person, if you don't know, not a belief, if you don't know that you're an eternal spiritual being, then you really have no role in doing this work, because this is what this work is all about. It's about spirituality. It's about awakening that you are an eternal spiritual person, being, So anyway, I didn't know that at that point. I'm here at my father's home, and I told my mother, I said, Mom, help me get Pop dressed. I have something very, very important to tell both of you. And so we got him dressed and we got him on the walker. He went outside to the patio. And so I told him what happened on Friday and what happened on Saturday. He goes, that happened to me. I go, what? I go, what? And then he begins to tell me his experience, which was the most powerful NDE of any book I ever read, any story.
Wow.
No. He told me he was up there 20 or 30 years. I said, what do you mean you were up there 20 or 30 years? Because God showed him, he had a life review. He didn't know what the term life review is, but he just said God showed him all the good things that he had done and all the bad things that he had done. And he relived that experience, not only in his body, but at the person that he affected simultaneously at the same time. And he also viewed it in 365-degree vision. It wasn't like this. It was like all around. And then, previously to that, he had met his father and his mother and his brother, all in their 30s. Before he met this as being that he associated as God, which was a huge, gigantic energy being. Okay. And then he told me time doesn't exist. Okay. Time doesn't exist, because I was up there 20 or 30 years. He said, there's no hell, because God is pure love. Okay. God is pure love. And he says, what else did he say? Here's another thing. The Cuban Archie Bunker tells me we're just here to make mistakes. We're just here to learn how to love. Okay. Because that's what God told me. Okay. We're just here to learn how to love. And then I reflected back that after that operation, which was 16 years before, he was always quiet. Before, he was always fighting, always having issues, everything bothered him. Okay. And now he was like super quiet all the time. I thought that after the operation that he had lost blood flow to his brain, that he was quiet all the time. But when you would talk to him, he'd be like a normal person. He just didn't want to talk. He was quiet the whole time. And when he was watching TV, he was like still staring in air. And then I realized afterwards, my goodness, he must have been reliving that experience all of these times, reliving it. And so I kept on asking him tons of questions, and then came a point where I don't want to talk about anymore. He just cut it. And so I turned to my mother. I said, Mom, did he ever mention that to you? And she said, only once. Okay. And that was when he woke up, he wanted to tell me something. And I was, go back to sleep. No, I need to tell you, go back to sleep. God damn it. I need to tell you something, because he was gone for 20 or 30 years and he needed to tell my mother. Okay. And so she put him back to sleep because he was waking up from anesthesia, and they never spoke about it again. Okay. So that was 3 days in a row. So on the way home, okay, I put down my windows. I was looking up at the stars in the sky. And Miami, there aren't tons like in a rural area. And for the first time, I talked to God. And also these modern angels, which are the intermediaries that are working with me. And I said, I want to thank you, because in over a 4-month period, you had managed to totally transform an atheist, a materialist, into someone, excuse me, that doesn't have a belief. No, I don't have a belief. I have a knowingness. I know that I'm an eternal spiritual being. And I have that knowingness more than any Catholic priest in Miami. And for that, I want to thank you. Okay. And all of a sudden, it was like, it was in there. It can never be taken away. Like I learned my lesson, and to this day, I still feel the same way, and it totally transformed me, totally changed me. And it did it via the NDE. Okay. As a matter of fact, and here's a side issue of the NDE that I want to raise. I think the NDE is the most important teaching tool that teaches us of the nature of our reality. And I'll go through it in a couple of minutes. But today I was on a conference call with Peter Fenwick. He's a major NDE researcher in the United Kingdom. Okay. He's been writing about NDEs for more than 25 years. And he's about 80 years old now, or a little bit older than 80 years old. And so I asked him a question which I knew the answer, because I have in our organization, the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, 3 other NDE researchers, Raymond Moody, Jeffrey Long, and Dr. Bruce Grayson. And so I asked Dr. Fenwick, I said, have you ever heard of people after they've had near-death experiences, they begin to see dead people? Okay. He goes, yes, it's very, very common. Okay. But it's just not as widely discussed as it should be. Okay. So he acknowledged it. And there's another medical doctor, Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, who has this organization that focuses on spiritually transformative experiences. She's had like 5 NDEs. And her focus is how people transform spiritually. She has seen UFOs. Okay. She has seen dead people after her NDE. She has had out-of-body experiences. And then there's a dear friend of mine, Dr. Melinda Greer, who had 2 NDEs. And her second NDE was like extremely powerful. And she's also had numerous out-of-body experiences, astral travel experiences. She's had 3 Sasquatch experiences. She's seen 12 UFOs, 12. Most of them very large, twice with her husband next to her. And they were different shapes and formats, and forms, the UFOs. But also after her second NDE, because she worked in a hospital, she began to see dead people all the time, going through elevator doors, going through walls, and so the point that I'm getting at is that all of what we're calling internally in our organization, the contact modalities, almost all of the scientists and medical doctors and researchers in our organization have 2 hypotheses. One is that consciousness is fundamental and not our physical reality. What we're dealing with, our physical reality, we think is real, but it actually is an illusion. Okay. And I'll discuss that in a couple of minutes. Number 2, all of what we're calling the paranormal contact modalities, all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil of our reality and having contact with non-human intelligence, okay, via near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, astral travel experiences, UFO contact experiences, remote viewing, seeing and communicating with the dead, okay, hallucinogenic contact, channeling, et cetera, Right now, it's being studied and viewed as separate and distinct phenomena. Okay, we're going to put the UFOs in the UFO box. We're going to put the NDE in the NDE box. We're going to put the out-of-body experience in the out-of-body experience box. And they have nothing to do with each other. But yet, when you talk to these major contact experiencers, okay, they're having everything in the kitchen sink. Okay?
All the same thing.
It's all one phenomenon.
One energy, one consciousness.
Yes.
One
yes. Under
different
under
a different and under one umbrella of consciousness.
Correct. And that's why we tried to introduce this concept. We did a book which was published in 2018, and that was done under the auspices of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And Edgar Mitchell was one of the co-founders.
This one?
Yes, that's it. That's the book right there.
You gave it to me. Incredible. Look at it.
820 pages. And the co-founders there was Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. He was the founder of the Institute for Noetic Sciences. And also he wrote a book in 1974, a 700-page book titled Psychic Exploration, which talked about all of the contact modalities, except I didn't talk about NDEs because NDE was not known at that time. It was a year later until Raymond Moody published his book Life After Life in 1975. And also he purposely wrote in there, we don't have anything about UFOs because there's zero academic research on the UFO phenomena, zero. Okay, and so that's why he mentioned it, but he said we don't have it as one of our chapters because there's nothing there, so we can't talk about it since academic research doesn't exist. It was an academic book written by numerous PhD academics. Okay, so then what had happened was that I was asking after my experiences, and I was having like 4 years of nonstop experiences, and I was in the very beginnings of having these experiences. I began to talk to a lot of individuals. In the beginning was experiencers, and then later on it began to be researchers in this phenomenon of mainly parapsychology. And I said, do you believe that what had happened was that I had an experience that gave me all of this knowledge. I'll go into it a little bit later. But basically, I started asking numerous of these researchers, do you believe that all of the paranormal is interrelated, somehow interrelated? And they all said yes. Okay. I said, well, I want to read that book. Well, it doesn't exist. Well, there must be an academic article on it. They said, no, it doesn't exist. And myself, I went to Berkeley for a PhD. That's right in your neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. And that was in the early 80s when Berkeley was Berkeley. Now, Berkeley doesn't have that reputation anymore. But back then, when I went to school in 1982, Berkeley was on the same level as Stanford, as Yale, Harvard, all, the elite of the elites. And I went to the top urban planning program in the country. So I am what you call an ABD, all but dissertation. I had done all of my coursework. I had gone to Cornell for a master's. So I did all of my coursework. I had passed all of my written exams for the PhD, all of my oral exams for my PhD. I wrote out a dissertation prospectus. I did an oral defense of it. Okay. And so I was on my way to write my dissertation to a university in New York called the New School for Social Research, which is in the social sciences is very, very well known. Okay. And so what the idea was that after I would finish my dissertation, they offered me a tenure track position. Okay. But I could have gone almost anywhere because Berkeley was the top planning school. But I wanted to stay in New York. I said, okay, they gave me a tenure track position. Let me finish my dissertation there. So I was working as a researcher while I was writing my dissertation. But a couple of months after I got there, my first wife got a brain aneurysm. And they did an operation in her. And she was basically was not medically well. She had to learn how to walk, learn how to talk, the whole works, and that lasted for many, many years. And she eventually died from lupus, which was that was one of the reasons why she was having all these illnesses. And her sister died from lupus too. But what had happened was that her mother was a retired factory worker, and her Social Security was almost nothing. Her sister was still in high school. My wife was an invalid, had 2 baby kids. Okay. And so how could I finish my dissertation? So I wound up taking 2 full-time jobs in order to sustain our household. So I was never able to finish my dissertation. And so I was always a frustrated academic, but I always thought in an academic mindset. So when these things were happening to me, I wanted to read what was written academically about this. You go to the internet, you hear, David Jacobs saying that all these experiences are all negative and they're creating hybrid babies and so I'm saying to myself, that's not what I'm encountering. It's totally different. It's more consciousness based, paranormal based. I was having out of body experiences. I was having, telepathic downloads and the whole gambit of experiences. And so then I began to ask these people, all these PhDs, people like, for example, Jeffrey Mishloff, people like Raymond Moody, people like Dr. Michael Grosso, who got a PhD in philosophy from Columbia and wrote 3 books on this. Okay, Dr. Kenneth Ring, who's one of the pioneers of near-death research, and on and on. And then John Klimo, who for 45 years was a professor of psychology, and he wrote several books on the paranormal. And later on, I found out that half of these people were experiencers themselves, and that's why they got interested into the topic in the first place. So it was nothing. Whoops, sorry about that. So no one had written about this, how it was all interconnected, and the topic of consciousness being fundamental. So then in May of 2013, okay, I was driving my car. This takes too long to say, but basically, in the middle while I was going to work, I was taken out of my body into another reality. In this other reality, I was shown all of what I now call the contact modalities, all of the paranormal that I mentioned to you earlier. I saw it while I was inside a gigantic wheel. I saw each of them as a separate spoke. And there was a video in it. And then I was getting downloads. Okay, this is about NDEs. This is about UFOs. This is about out-of-body experience. This is about, remote viewing. This is about ghosts and spirits, et cetera, et cetera. And then it gave me information, telepathic information of what all of this was all about. That it was all connected. It was all one. And consciousness was the glue that's holding it together. And it was much, much more than that, but I'm just giving the very short version of it. And then when I got home later, I got an email from Mary Rodwell, and it said, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry that I haven't responded to an email that you had sent me 6 months ago, but it just popped up on my computer." Okay. And I said, "Well, this ain't nothing. In the last 6 months, this is all the crazy stuff that's happened in the last 6 months. And this is what happened today." So she goes, "Oh my God, Ray, I need to talk to you." And for people who don't know who Mary Rodwell is, she is like the equivalent of Barbara Lamb. Okay. On parallel with Barbara Lamb mixed with Dolores Cannon. Excuse me. And so well known in the United Kingdom, and she's from Australia. And so what had happened was back in October, I had sent an email to like 10 very famous names in ufology, and only 2 people had responded back. One was Whitley Strieber, another one was like Grant Cameron, I think it was. And so Mary never responded, and here she was 6 months later saying that my email was held up in cyberspace. So if anyone has an interview with Mary Rodwell in the future, ask her about this crazy story with Ray Hernandez, and she will tell you, the God's honest truth of what happened. So then we stayed up to like 1:30 in the morning, and I said, "Look, Mary, I got to go to work tomorrow," because she's 12 hours ahead of us. And so then the next day at 9:30 in the morning, I got a phone call. Okay, this is like 25 hours after this experience. "Hello, is this Ray Hernandez?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "Dr. Rudy Shields." Dr. Rudy Shields, an emeritus professor of astrophysics from Harvard University. Okay. We talked for 90 minutes. And he basically said, "Look, you were given a clear mandate of what you needed to do." I thought this man was crazy. I don't know what the hell he wanted. He said, "What you got was a download of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness." Okay. And then he said, "Call him up. Here's his telephone number." And I was scared of calling Edgar because I knew who he was, very, very famous man, So 4 hours later, I gave him a call. And he says, "Rudy and I already discussed, your case." And he said that you're someone very, very important that I need to meet, not to talk over the phone, but to meet. And he said, he told me that you live in Miami. I said, "Yeah, I do." He says, "Well, I only live an hour and a half from you, okay, in Lake Worth, Florida." He says, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go to work." He said, "Well, can you take that day off from work?" I said, "I sure can." He says, "Can you come to my house?" And he told me where he lived. And I said, "Sure." I said, "What time would you like me to come by?" 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, I was at his house. And I was there for more than 6 hours. But what had happened was that at the home of Edgar Mitchell, he planted the seed of forming an organization to implement the download that I had gotten. Okay. And when I left his house, I said, "This man's kookier than the other guy, Rudy Shields, But now I know that these men were, light years ahead of everyone else. And these are
But he had
brilliant.
never heard anything like yours. I mean, you said that before, but he had never heard anything
Well,
like yours.
well,
'Cause you
what I
wove it all together, right?
No, 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 no. What he had done, which I didn't know, is he had spoken with literally hundreds of experiencers.
Yeah.
He later on formed an organization called Eternia, which dealt with near-death experiences. Okay, with Dr. Eben Alexander and John Audette, who is one of the co-founders of the Institute, um, 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 International Association for Near-Death Studies. Okay, which is the main organization for to study NDEs. So Edgar knew about the NDE. As a matter of fact, right on his deathbed, we spoke about NDEs. Okay, at his deathbed. And but anyway, so when I got home, I told Edgar. I said, well, before I left, I said, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. He says, don't worry, it'll come to you. It always works that way. Okay, I had no idea what he meant. But now I understand that he was a sage. He knew about this phenomenon. And so later on a Saturday morning, that's the first Saturday morning, it was like 2 or 3 days later, I woke up early in the morning, and I knew exactly what we'd be doing. And so I wrote out like an 8-page abstract of that book, Beyond UFOs, the methodology that we would be doing. So then I sent it to Edgar, sent it to Rudy, sent it to Mary Rodwell, and they said, "Oh my God, Ray, this is absolutely brilliant." Which what it was the world's first and only comprehensive academic research study, statistical, both quantitative and qualitative, done on a worldwide basis in multiple languages, of individuals that had seen UFOs and have had contact with non-human intelligence. Okay, and I wrote down 8 pages of the whole methodology of how to do this. And so what happened was they said, let's go for it. And then they said, let's form the organization, the 4 of us as the co-founders. And then eventually it was Rudy Shields that suggested that I go to see Edgar and ask him whether we could name it under his behalf to honor his work. And he graciously accepted it. And it became known as the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And so we spent 6 to 9 months really fine-tuning the methodology. And during that time period, we were bringing lots of people in to the group. Barbara was one of the individuals that came and joined us from the very beginning. Kathleen Marden, okay? Kathleen Marden, who originally wrote the book Captured, the Benny and Barney Hill, story. Her most recent book is From Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. Okay, so she's just an example of all of the people that took our survey. It was like 85% of these people underwent this traumatic change. Okay, we had people like Dr. Leo Sprinkle, the first academic to ever write an article about the alien contact phenomena. Okay, and then we had a boatload of PhD academics. And then we developed the methodology. We did the 3 surveys, and then we administered it. Another person was Rosemary Allen Guiley, and she wrote 65 books on all aspects of the paranormal, including possessions, ghosts, spirits, poltergeists, the jinn, demonic aspects of it. So like everybody knew that this wasn't just love and light stuff, that this was a little bit more complicated. And so what Rosemary brought to the table is, that other component of it that these other individuals were not researching. But she did write several books on UFOs as well. And so we had another man who was a very dear friend of John Keel. And John Keel was one of the first ufologists to understand that this was beyond materialism, that the UFO phenomenon did not involve, pure material UFOs. These beings were not pure material beings; that they were much more complex than that. And Brent Rains is his name, and so he was part of our group as well. So we had a very diverse group of people. And then when the data started coming in, it was basically the academics that then took over, to look at the data. We kept, Barbara Lamb informed, Mary Rodwell informed, Kathleen Marden informed, and we started crunching out the number. We had 2 PhD statisticians. We had Bob Davis, who was a professor of neuroscience. And then when it came time to actually write the book, again, a Saturday morning, I had no idea what I was going to do with all this data. Saturday morning come up, I had all the chapters, all the authors, okay? And so I started calling the folks up. I said, Kathleen Marden, would you want to write this chapter? Blah, blah, blah. Sure, Send me the data. Here's the data. Boom, Mary Rodwell, do you want to write this chapter? Boom, this other man that was part of our organization, Reverend Michael Carter, an ordained minister. I said, do you want to write the chapter about spiritual transformation? Boom, Dr. Joseph Burks, who's a retired medical doctor, emergency room physician, major contact experiencer. I said, do you want to, he and Preston Dennett, okay? Because Preston had written one book, 100 UFO healings, okay? Cases. I said, well, do you want to get together with Dr. Joseph Burks, who's a medical doctor, to review all the medical healings? It was 50% of the people that took our survey had a miraculous medical healing. Isn't that just unbelievable? 50% had a miraculous medical healing, just like our Lord. Okay, Mary Rodwell knew this. Barbara Lamb knew this. Kathleen Martin knew this. Leo Sprinkle knew this, but they just didn't have the statistical what percent, okay, of the people. Okay, we had another of the major findings was that while in the beginning these experiences were quite frightful, 37% stated that their experiences were negative. They were frightening, okay? But that was at the very beginning, their first or two experiences. But then we found out was that 40% of these people had 20 or more experiences. 40%. Another 20% had 10 or more, 10 to 20 experiences. So right there, 60% of the people had more than 10 experiences. We then compared two responses to questions. The people that said how negative was or how positive it was. And then we took the data of how many experiences that we had and we overlapped them. And what we found out was that the more experiences you had, the more positive was your viewpoint. It was only people that had one or two experiences, mainly the people who had abductions, okay? Those are the people that said it was negative. Well, what did we find out? The positive transformation, it was over 95% of these people at the end, when they were taking the surveys, that their experiences were not negative, 95%, okay? We also found out, and we did that via 25 different questions, because depending how you ask a question, you'll get a different answer, okay? For example, we asked a question, if you could stop your contact experiences, would you stop them? Okay. And if this was David Jacobs, so horrifying experiences, everybody would want them to stop. Well, guess what? 84% said, keep it coming, baby. Keep it coming. Don't make this stop. Okay. All right. I need this. Okay. 84%. Okay. We also, so there was 25 questions that we asked about whether it was positive, negative, and neutral. We also wanted to find out about ufology thinks that all of these contact experiences have to do only with abductions. Okay. So we asked that question. Have you ever had an abduction, which is defined as a physical taking, without your consent to another reality? Okay. Well, 1/3 of the people said, I had an abduction. The other 2/3 never had an abduction. Like in my case, I never had an abduction. I don't know what the hell they were talking about with abductions. Well, 2/3 of the people, the same thing. Thousands of people said the same thing. I never had an abduction. Then we asked questions specifically to the people that had an abduction. Okay. We asked like 20 questions. Okay. To find out what was that all about. Okay. The abduction phenomenon, 70% of these people no longer call themselves abductees. They call themselves contactees. Okay. They started off fearful and frightened. Because I said 37% started off fearful and frightened. Okay. 70% said, no, I'm a conscious contactee. Okay. I now understand what all of this was all about. Okay.
I do too, from age 5 when I went on
Yep.
craft, and then 6 and then 10. I've been 150 times, and
Yep.
it is terrifying in the beginning, and then you see the beauty when you get to know the star people.
Exactly.
You get to know our friends, the love, they're here to help and to educate and to groom us and help us. And
yeah, what we were able to determine was that initially, most of the initial contact experiences dealt with physicality.
Mhm.
Okay, they would give you like a medical checkup. Okay, which is extremely frightening. But then later on, you might get a tour of the craft. They show you what that was all about. And then later on, an interesting part, which is rarely discussed in ufology. Okay, the short grays in the very beginning for the people that have had an abduction, not the non-abductees. People have never had an abduction. I've never seen a short gray. I've seen everything except a short gray. Okay. But the people that had an abduction initially started with the short grays. Towards the end of their experiences, it was either the energy being or the human looking being. Okay. And that's where the spiritual lessons were taught. Okay. It wasn't necessarily the short grays. It was these other types of beings that were these higher forms of lessons, started. We still don't understand that dynamic. That has to be studied more. Okay. Because we didn't have any funding to do these things. Most of the people that were helping us with our study, they were all in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Half of them are dead. Edgar Mitchell died. Leo Sprinkle died. Rosemary Ellen Guiley passed away. Rudy, towards the very end, he fell down in the snow and he cracked his head. John Climo now suffered a stroke and he cannot communicate. So this work needs to continue and needs to be continued with youngsters, because all we did was just, crack the very foundations of the UFO contact phenomenon. The major findings that we found out, number one, that these experiences were overwhelmingly positive. That was number one. Number two, these experiences were overwhelmingly transformative. Okay. And that was found out by Dr. Kenneth Ring back in 1992. He did a study where he compared 85 people that had NDEs with 85 people that had abduction experiences. And he looked at how they changed over time. And what did he find out? Both groups changed exactly the same way. Okay. They no longer fear death. Material things is not important anymore. Let me drive the old Honda Accord, the new Mercedes-Benz every year that I was getting. That's not important in life. Okay. They became much more consciously aware. They became much more spiritual. They became less religious. They became much more ecologically friendly. They became much more loving and caring, okay, to their family members and to their brethren. I could go on and on and on. We have 70 questions, okay? All were major transformations for all of these questions. For the UFO, not the NDE, the UFO contact experiencer. And again, you go to a UFO conference, nobody talks about these things. Why? Because no one's ever done the study before. We were the first one to do it, okay? The third major finding was that while materialist ufology believes that this phenomenon is primarily a physicalist phenomenon, okay? They study physical UFOs, they study physical pictures, physical videos, physical UFO crashes, okay? For the contactee, the overwhelming majority of these experiences were non-physical, okay? They might have seen a UFO. Like in my life, I've called down 4 UFOs. I've only tried 5 times. That's it. To me, it's like blasé, there's no need to do it, okay? But 4 times I was successful. 3 of the 4 times, it was these huge objects that appeared, okay? So it's physical. I saw a physical being right in front of me. I saw shadow people. Like we were on a Skype call when we were doing the free foundation. We had a support group for individuals, right? So I had 2 volunteers and they were watching me. And all of a sudden I saw my image in front of me and they were watching me. And a shadow person went right behind me, went right through a window. Okay. It had a head, it had a body, it had 2 arms and 2 legs. Okay. And it went like, shoo. And the 2 ladies started screaming. I said, don't worry, it's just a shadow person. Chill out. That's nothing,
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. But I've had all these things all my life, So yes, these are physical experiences that you see with your eyes. You can hear, and your brain is able to identify these things as physical, okay? But in reality, the overwhelming experiences that I had were non-physical. They were all paranormal. They dealt with the contact modalities. They dealt with being brought to other multidimensional realities. Okay. All of a sudden, you're not on Earth anymore. Okay. You're having out-of-body experiences. Okay. You're getting telepathic communications. Okay. You're seeing deceased people. Okay. So these are all, non-physical experiences. And that's what we concluded in our book, Beyond UFOs. The fourth major conclusion was that the UFO phenomena involves a manipulation of space-time. Okay. That this has to deal with an altering of space and time. Okay. Now, other conclusions that I talked about in my new book titled The Mind of God. If you're a cheapskate, this book only costs $10 on Kindle. Okay. For a 6-pack of beer, you can buy my book. And I'm sure it'll be much more worth it than you being drunk off a 6-pack of beer. Okay. So it's titled The Mind of God. It's available on Amazon. Okay. And that is actually the introduction to a 4-volume book. Each volume is 800 pages. Okay. So if you don't want to read 3,200 pages, read this. Okay. This is an introduction to those 4 volumes. The 4-volume book is titled A Greater Reality: The New Paradigm of Non-Local Consciousness, the Paranormal and the Contact Modalities. Okay. There's 5 co-editors. There's myself, Rudy, the professor from Harvard. There's John Klimo, the professor of psychology. There's Michael Grosso, PhD from Columbia University in philosophy, who's written primarily about the paranormal and consciousness. And there's Dr. Jeffrey Long, one of the world's leading authorities on near-death experiences. And here we talk about all of the contact modalities. Just for example, the topic of UFOs is in volume 2. We have 11 chapters, 11 authors that talk about UFOs from a non-materialist perspective, from a consciousness-based perspective. Okay, it's a totally different worldview that many of you have never been exposed to. Okay, and again, each of these books are $10 on Kindle. Okay, you don't need to read the hard copy. I paid $150 each to have each book converted to Kindle. Okay, and it's like 5 people have bought the book so far, so I'm never even going to be able to recoup the Kindle for each one. Now, volumes 1 and 2 are theoretical in nature. Those are written by medical doctors and academics, but they're written for the lay person. You don't have to be a PhD in physics to understand it. The most difficult article was an article written by the late Dr. Edgar Mitchell. That article was his magnum opus about consciousness and non-locality. Okay, I had to read that 3 times to begin to understand it. It wasn't written for a physicist, but it was couched in physics terms. Okay, that was only published before in the Journal of Cosmology, which is the astrophysics journal of Dr. Rudy Shields. Okay, that is the most difficult one to read. All the other ones are written that the normal average person can understand, but it was written by PhD academics and medical doctors. Okay, all about what is consciousness, what is non-locality. Okay, what are the Akashic records? How does the human download information, the binary codes, the 0 and 1s, from the Akashic records, which leads to all the contact modalities, precognition, knowing future events that are taking place. The UFO phenomena, we talk about NDEs, we talk about the survival of consciousness after death, which is a separate topic. We had a professor, a PhD in philosophy from NYU. She wrote a paper that won runner-up prize to the Bob Bigelow Institute on Consciousness. We have 3 people that won awards for that competition. Jeffrey Mishloff won the grand prize. He published in our book. Okay, this is the grand prize winner for the Bob Bigelow Consciousness Institute essay contest. The female professor that wrote that won a runner-up prize, her name is Howlett. Oh my goodness. My Alzheimer's is kicking in. I apologize, but it was really, I thought it was the best of all the essays, because I read all those 56 essays that they published. Her essay was by far the best, and we asked her permission to publish it, and she said yes. Okay, and really, it's the best arguments for the survival of consciousness. Okay, And then we have also a chapter that talks about hallucinogens. It was a professor um, um, at John Hopkins School of Medicine, okay, that wrote that chapter about how DMT is just like a near-death experience. Okay, so again, it's comparing these two objects. Okay, so so this book, volumes 1 and 2 are theoretical. Volumes 3 and 4 are not published yet. I'm working on them, and we have over 75 articles written by experiencers of the contact modalities. These are major experiencers, like I spoke about, Dr. Melinda Greer, who's had everything in the kitchen sink. We have people like that we've had everything, not everything, but at least 3 of the major contact modalities. So they wrote their own chapters, and it talked about, again, how all of them are interrelated, that we need to study them as one phenomenon, not a separate and distinct phenomenon. And so, do you personally have any questions? Again, volumes 1 and 2 of this book here, A Greater Reality, is available on Amazon. You can get it for $10 each in Kindle format. And then this other book, The Mind of God, which is the introduction to the 4 volumes, is also available on Amazon. If you have any questions, I can give you half of the first book, Beyond UFOs, for free.
Why don't you give them because we have to wrap it up now, but
Yeah.
I'd love you to come back for part 2 of this, because you have so much more information. I know you're only just skimming the surface right now.
Yeah.
How can they contact you?
They could send me an email, and I will do this, because this is not about making money. I don't make any money out of this. I lose money, right? Like I told you about the Kindle, okay? So I'll give you the first book, Beyond UFOs, which is that big fat book that you showed earlier. That's this book. I'll give you, half of this book, including an academic paper that we published, that was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration. Okay, I'll give you half of that. Plus, I'll give you a 7-page abstract that talks about the summary findings, similar to what I spoke about. In case you don't want to read the 820 pages, you're more than free to do that, But if you just want, Ray, give me the summary of it, I'll send that to you too. Okay, all for free, and the academic journal. And then on top of that, I will send you 7 articles, 7 chapters from volumes 1 and volume 2. I'll send you 5 chapters from our theoretical section, and I'll send you 2 chapters from our experiencers. Okay, and these 2 experiencers are going to blow you away. Okay, one is a retired medical doctor. She retired this year. She was a pediatrician, but she's had some unbelievable experiences. And the one that blows me away is her Sasquatch experiences. All night she was with a Sasquatch. Okay, scared the living daylights out of her. Okay, and she's seen 12 UFOs, near-death experiences. Her consciousness of Dr. Melinda Greer was uploaded to like a central computer, to the Mind of God, and what remained was just pure consciousness after she had died, and her consciousness of her life was uploaded. I mean, unbelievable, her story. So I'll send it to you for free. The email, write this down. Don't forget. Okay, this is free stuff. Okay, better than a 6-pack of beer, better than half a glass of wine. Not a full glass, but half a glass is better. And the email is info, INFO, at agreaterreality.com. So that's info at agreaterreality.com. Go to our website. The website is agreaterreality.com. And there you can see all of the people that have written chapters for volumes 1 and volume 2. And that's a work in progress, but at least it'll give you an idea. You'll see their pictures, you'll see their bios, who they are, and they know that we're not a rinky-dink organization, that we are an academic research institute. This is the real thing, and no one is doing anything close to what we're doing. No one. So it's info at agreaterreality.com. I'm giving this to you for free, folks, okay? So please take advantage of it.
Well, unbelievable. You are, I can't wait for all this to come out. People are going to go, why the hell did we wait for so long for Ray to put all this together? It's brilliant. thank you so much for being here. And can you please come back 1 or 2 more times soon? And
Yes,
continue, and we're gonna, after we talk, we're gonna talk, and I'm gonna figure out 2 or 3 more times, because you have to go step by step all the way through it. And this
yeah,
needs to
it's
get
it's
out
a,
and
it's a
put it
lot,
on
it's a
here.
lot to, it's a lot to digest. This. What I would like to do next time is focus solely on this book, The Mind of God, because this is a synopsis, okay? A synopsis of all the books that we've done. And it takes you step by step by step. And it finishes with 2 concepts. One is about reincarnation, which is rarely discussed about. And the other one is the concept of love.
Oh, which is what is everything right now. It's
Yeah,
all about love.
it's all about love. And I will give you a reason why it's all about love, because a lot of people just talk about it, love and light, love, whatever. I'll tell you why. Love is the most important and profound message that we are here on this planet to do.
Right now, this
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why we're here now
yeah,
together,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So I'll give that presentation about that book, The Mind of God. That'll be my next time.
Good. Oh, I love you. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow, hopefully. Okay.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you, all. And everyone, please email this incredible Ray, who has devoted this life to the understanding Big Bang. He has completely put it all together with the top people in the world. This is it. This is what we're here for now, to be learning. And that you're doing it all for free is just unbelievable. Talk about being of service.
Yeah,
Just
and
unbelievable. We need to donate a lot of money to you. We have to figure out a way to get you funds for all this, because you need to get reimbursed for some of this.
no, that's not my
It is-
purpose.
it is-
I just want people to read it. I want people to read it.
Right.
You
I
know,
know you do.
I could give it away for free, which is what I'm doing,
You are.
Yeah. So I
But
just want
anyway-
people to read.
Well, thank you. And to be continued. Can't wait for
To
several
be
more
continued.
sessions with you.
And very important for the introduction is I state a very specific reason why this is happening now. Very, very specific reason. So we can start on that point.
We will start
Okay.
on that.
Yeah.
All righty. Lots of love. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.